On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, we're getting hot and sweaty over Prince's Jungle Love, a song he wrote for the Times' third album, Ice Cream Castles, but was also featured prominently in the movie Purple Rain. And joining me on this episode to talk about Jungle Love is Farooq Ansari. Welcome back to the show, Farooq.
Great to be back, Jason. It's been a long time, hasn't it? A few years, a couple of years, maybe.
A couple of years, yeah. It's been a little bit, but I've recruited you back to talk about a song that Prince wrote and recorded, gave to the time. We've got a version, Prince's version, on the originals from 2019 to talk about, and that's what I've been doing for these originals episodes, is really just honing in on the Prince versions of these songs. So, like for Jungle Love, the version that Prince recorded that was on originals, the basic track, the guide vocal track, is relatively short. It's about 3 minutes long, and it definitely does not include the guitar solo from Jesse Johnson that you could find on the album version. But I mean, guitar solos don't have anything to do with lyrics anyway, so it's really not. I don't think we're really missing anything by talking about Prince's version, the version from originals, versus talking about the Times version of Jungle Love that was on Ice Cream Castles. What do you think?
I agree with you. I mean, lyrically, they're pretty much the same. I think it's interesting, obviously, within the context of Ice Cream Castle, which was, I think, was the Times breakthrough album. So, yeah. And I believe Jungle Love was their highest charting single at the time, wasn't it? Until Jerk Out, which came months later. Yeah, so it was kind of a breakthrough hit. But yeah, you're right. I think focusing on the Prince version, which I really like, actually. It's one of the standout tracks on the originals album for me.
Yeah, Jungle Love is just a funky song, period. I mean, it's in the movie, it comes like very early on. It's the song that they play right after the Revolution gets off stage from performing Let's Go Crazy, which is the song that opens the movie. So right then and there, you're getting Jungle Love. You're seeing the Time, doing their thing. The Bring Me a Mirror gag is happening there. Morris is preening on stage. The band is syncopated and tight. They're throwing a party, and but the intention of Jungle Love in the film is to show how much of a crowd-pleasing band the Time really is at First Avenue in the film, and why the Time are the band to beat. If you're gonna look at the battle of the bands at First Avenue, they're the band to beat. They perform after the Revolution, so by default they're the headliners. So and Jungle Love is, they have to put a song right there to kind of give the audience a feeling like, yeah, these guys are really good. No wonder why the Revolution is trying to get up to their level, because this is a tight, fun, funky song that is an enormous crowd pleaser, I think. Do you remember the first time you ever heard the song, Farooq?
Yeah, well, the first time I heard the song properly was when I first watched Purple Rain, and I was a kid. And yeah, it's quite an introduction, isn't it, to the Time and to Morris Day and to Jerome as well. I mean, I think, like you say, it's a proper crowd pleaser, but also you kind of realize that First Avenue is the Times crib, isn't it? They're the guys who run it. This is what they do. They've got the crowd going crazy after Let's Go Crazy. And that kind of sets the story, doesn't it, as Prince goes through his increasingly...
I do that all the
time. And, he has his domestic issues and his artistic issues, and his music kind of, goes through peaks and lows, at least in the eyes of, the club owner and also the Time. Whereas, this sets the scene for the Time being the kind of establishment at First Avenue. and they know how to rock the crowd, and Jungle Love has got the whole club moving. So it's a great intro, and like you say, it shows how tight a band the time are and were. And that whole routine with the mirror when Jerome Benton holds it up and he does his hair and the rest of it. I mean, that's still a part of their routine now, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, that is an indelible image, and it is something like the Jungle Love in and of itself is probably the time's most recognizable song. Yes, technically, Jerk Out was it reached higher on the charts, on the pop charts, but I don't, when I listen to 80s stations or classic stations, which I cringe having to say that, but it's the truth. The time song that they play is Jungle Love. Period. That's the song that you hear today, 40 years later, almost 40 years later, is Jungle Love. So I think it is their most recognizable song, and it's likely the song that the most casual time fan or just pop music fan might know.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's like the archetypal time song. It's the one that comes to mind, like not only just sonically, but visually as well. I think that those guys being on stage in Purple Rain, that's the image that comes to mind for me. And like you say, Jerk Out charted higher. I don't know. It's not the best time song, I don't think. I mean, I really like Ice Cream Castle. I think that's just brilliant. And there's a few others as well, some of the ballads, but it's definitely the most archetypal, the most recognizable, the most iconic time track.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. So just going over a little bit of recording history, background of the song. So according to Prince Vault, Jungle Love was initially written by Jesse Johnson and with some help from Morris Day. So, but then in the very next sentence, it clarifies that Prince wrote the lyrics and came up with the melody. So I'm curious what it is that Jesse brought to Prince when he presented this song to him as, a potential song for whatever, for the time, I imagine. But I mean, Jesse had written it potentially for others in mind as well, and then he brought it to Prince, and Prince was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Let's do something with this. But I'm curious what they presented if Prince had the lyrics, so it must have been an instrumental, and then it said Prince came up with the melody. So was it just like the guitar riff? Was it, I don't know, a drum track? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was trying to get to the bottom of this as well. So, like you said, like all good Prince fans, I went to Prince Vault and read that as well. But the brilliant Tudal book about the sessions, I think it talks about Jesse Johnson bringing something to the studio on the night, and I don't know. I got the impression it was a piece of guitar work, and then
which would make sense because that's what Jesse was a guitarist.
That's it. And then, like you say, Prince wrote the lyrics and came up with the melody. They were jamming till about 2 a.m. And they came up with Jungle Love. So I think Jesse and Morris were definitely involved in it. They both bought components, but Prince, in typical Prince fashion, was the maestro who put it all together. And interestingly, apparently after they finished with recording Jungle Love, Jesse Johnson went off at about 2 a.m. and recorded a track with Shalimar straight afterwards.
That's interesting.
Quite an evening, right?
Yeah, quite an evening. These guys were prolific with a capital P.
And never slept. It was that part of the Purple Rain era where I think he was just coming out with like so many songs every week, every hour. And that's why I think so many Prince fans of all ages, I think, look to this as one of the creative and artistic peaks of his time, because he was so prolific. He had that whole, he had the Revolution thing going, he had the Time thing going, he had all these side projects, and I think he just had so many ideas at that time. He just needed all these different fronts, all these different personas to get all that creativity out, which would, culminate with stuff like Dreams and the Crystal Ball and Sign of the Times and Dream Factory. Sorry. So, but yeah, it's that part of that amazing creative period of what a lot of people would consider peak Prince, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we're looking at from a timing perspective, this was the basic tracking took place in March of '83, so that is what we believe we have with the originals version. The originals version does include not just Prince, so like a lot of those songs on originals that, you know, Prince's guide vocal tracks or just the stuff that he gave to other artists to, you know, create their versions was often just Prince doing everything. But this Jungle Love has not just Prince, but it also has Morris Day and Jerome Johnson, Morris Day and Jesse Johnson. I was like Jerome Benton, Jelly Bean Johnson, Jesse Johnson. So anyway, there's a lot of J names in the time. And then to top it off, you got Jill Jones, who was also credited on the originals version, so with some background vocals. So you've got an interesting approach for, you know, one of those basic backing tracks that he was doing. So once he did this, you know, he definitely had it in mind for the time. I mean, just the way it's written, the lyrics, you can definitely tell, at least I can, that it was clearly written for the Morris Day character, with the way that the lines, all the come-ons and the, you know, the braggadocio, that the pompous lover man attitude that Morris Day presented on stage in the Purple Rain film, that was very clearly evident in when Prince was writing the lyrics, I think. So I can't imagine he had anybody else in mind for this song besides Morris Day to perform it when he wrote the lyrics, at least.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Even if you just read the lyrics, especially, I mean, if you've seen Purple Rain, then it just shouts out that Morris Day character, doesn't it? The words he uses, just the concepts behind it, they're kind of very, very unsubtle. Like you say, braggadocio, the guy who's in control, old-fashioned, chauvinistic. Yeah, you know, there's all this talk about, you know, how certain elements of Purple Rain are quite misogynistic, and that usually refers to Morris Day's character. And yeah, it's not woke by any means, is
it? No, not at all. But you know, it is, like I said, 40 years old at this point. So we're recording this,
and yeah, and it's tongue in cheek as well, isn't it? I think anyone who takes that seriously is seriously misreading the character, but also seriously not getting Prince's sense of humor as well. This is all kind of, you know, he's definitely not a role model, is he?
No, Morris Day is not a role model in Purple Rain. And, you know, I mean, he's portrayed as the villain because you're supposed to be rooting for the kid. And so by default, because Morris Day is his antagonist, you have to look at him as a bit of a villain. So in that respect, it works, because especially if you cringe or you roll your eyes at some of his old-fashioned chauvinistic behavior and you know, the playing himself up to be greater and better and more, you know, wealthy that he really is. But that's all played for laughs. I mean, I get a kick out of those scenes where he's talking to Apollonia in the club and talking about his brass waterbed and you know, his all the things that he has. And then he gives a big tip and then he tells Jerome to go get his money back. You know, it's all intentional for a laugh, for sure.
Totally, yeah. As you were saying that, I was just about to mention the brass waterbed as well. So, yeah.
Not just any waterbed, mind you. Okay, so lyrically, like, again, I don't think that there's going to be a lot to uncover here. So we'll just go through it and see what we see. But at the same time, it's just a fun, funky song. It doesn't have to have a deeper meaning or, you know, some hidden you know, something to explore or to dive into. So you, at the start of the song, you've got Morris Day or Prince in the originals version making that kind of animalistic, I don't know if it's an ape sound, sound at the beginning, which of course primal, sets the tone. Yeah, very primal. And that's one of the words that I wrote down when I was trying to think of words to kind of describe what jungle love is. We'll get to that in the chorus. I've been watching you. I think I want to know ya. Said now, I'm a little dangerous. Girl, I'd love to show ya. So that's just the first verse, and I think it's just, I get imagery of just somebody who's kind of on the prowl. Like that's also very jungle analogy to be made here, is animals on the prowl, looking for their prey.
Yeah, the word you're looking for maybe is predator here, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like you say, it is, on one level, it is jungle imagery. But yeah, again, to me, in my mind, whenever I kind of hear this, I just picture Morris like being like his jungle is First Avenue, and he's in that club, and he's on the prowl, and there's Apollonia somewhere, and he's kind of stalking in a slightly disturbing fashion.
Yes. I mean, there's the scene where he's telling Jerome, when he's got some honeys on the side, and he wants to make sure that he lets him know when Apollonia comes in, so that he can, ditch them for her. So yeah, very, very predatory. I've been watching you. I think I want to know you. I'm a little dangerous. Predators are dangerous by definition. So that word fits perfectly, Farooq. So thank you for that one.
I think, Jason, the more we analyze this, the darker it gets.
Yeah, I mean, it can be looked at dark. I mean, there's definitely some lines later in the song, but the way it's performed kind of prevents it from being overly dark, thankfully.
Oh yeah, there is this kind of overarching layer of sort of tongue-in-cheek that pervades every aspect of the song, which is probably a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I would say. I would definitely say. So anyway, as it goes from I'm a little dangerous, girl, I'd love to show ya my jungle love. Oh-wee, oh-wee, oh. I think I want to know ya. And there's some echoing there. Jungle love, girl, I'd love to show ya. So back to what I was kind of suggesting before, is like, what is jungle love? What does that mean? What is being implied by saying I want to show you my jungle love? I just wrote down some words, and I wrote down primal, as you had already kind of brought up. I wrote down animalistic, uninhibited. So these are the types of love that I think is being suggested that is going to be shown. So really just kind of animal. And when I say love, obviously I mean sex. And
sure.
so let's just
in case anyone was wondering.
Just in case anybody was not clear, that love in this song, I do not believe is the traditional, romantic love that is.
I don't think he's going for any deep Shakespearean notion of love here, is he?
No, I don't believe so either. This is very much a sexual song. So yeah, that's kind of what I get. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The other word that comes to mind is wild, along with animalistic and primal and the rest of it. And and that's the whole. You get wild at parties, right? NPG and Prince had Get Wild a few years later down the line. So, but again, what they have in common is they're big kind of boisterous party anthems, and it's all about letting your hair down, having a good time. I guess here it's kind of more focused, if that's the right word, in, like you say, in a slightly aggressive but tongue-in-cheek sexual manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is nothing hidden or multi-layered about what jungle love is actually about here, is there?
No, I don't.
Or about
think so,
him
either.
Loving to show you.
Right. I agree. I don't think that there is either, and that's what he wants to show, is his animalistic side, his primal side, his wild side, and I think he's trying to basically say, I'm not going to show you a version of myself that is not going to be over the top. Whatever your deepest, darkest desires are, that's what I can deliver. One thing I wanted to note, well, two things I wanted to know. One, with the OEOEO. So I guess, and I read this somewhere, and I didn't pick up on it myself, but I guess it could be considered similar to like Tarzan's yell. When you think of the Tarzan yell, I'm trying to think of how it goes.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's almost like a take on that. But I always kind of also heard the chant from The Wizard of Oz, and I know it's different. That's oh, oh, and that's not the same thing. It's oh, so it's much faster. So I don't know. I mean, I get a little bit of both.
That's a really good point as well. And the was obviously kind of turns up a lot of Prince live performances, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a beautiful night.
Yeah, the Sign of the Times, exactly. So yeah, this is like a variation on a theme. Wizard of Oz, that's an interesting connection.
I don't know. I mean, I know that better than I know Tarzan. So yeah, I grew up watching Wizard of Oz. I didn't grow up watching Tarzan, although I'm very familiar with the Tarzan yell.
Right.
Somewhat familiar with it, but and that makes more sense.
There's the jungle link, isn't there? And Tarzan was Lord of the Apes, so like King of the Jungle and all the rest of it. So yeah, I can see how that makes conceptual sense.
Yeah, conceptually it makes more sense than the Wizard of Oz reference that I cited. But I still hear it. I'm sorry, I can't not hear it, even if it's wrong.
I'm going to start hearing it now, I think.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry for anybody who never thought of Wizard of Oz before when listening to the song.
Yeah, this adds a whole new dimension to my understanding of it now.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, so Zach Hoskins, who's been on my show a number of times and has a brilliant blog at princesongs.org. It's his DMSR blog, where he breaks down Prince song one track at a time. He did an essay on Jungle Love a few years back, and he brought up an interesting topic around the term jungle, and jungle being used in reference to black music. So there's obviously racial connotations that can be applied to this song, especially when it's being performed by a black artist or black artists like The Time, written by a black man like Prince. And it could be like Prince's or The Times version of Jungle Boogie, like Kool and the Gang's Jungle Boogie from the 70s. That was a song that Zach cited as a potential inspiration for this song, and just how, it's that whole raw primal word that can be applied to black music based off of just some, maybe originally some negative racial stereotypes and negative racial connotations, but then repurposed by the black community to make it more positive, like Jungle Boogie or potentially Jungle Love. So I thought I should at least bring that up for anybody who's listening.
I mean, that's an interesting angle, isn't it? And it's quite timely because, like with Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe that just come out. There's a lot of the analysis around that is, there was that time in Prince's career where he was trying to kind of, I guess, after the revolution and the more eclectic Sign of the Times type stuff, he was trying to get more of a black audience back to his music. And so this is a few years earlier. But again, some people have kind of posited that, The Time was the outlet for a more black sound, whereas, the revolution, a more racially diverse, I guess, act influenced by people like Wendy and Lisa. There was, there's more rock, there's more mainstream kind of daytime radio type stuff going on. So The Time was maybe an earlier vehicle for his expression of a blacker type of music, I think. And so maybe that kind of ties into what you've just been saying as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine Prince in the Revolution performing a song called Jungle Love. It doesn't fit. I mean, Jungle Love was a crossover hit, so it's not like it didn't have the potential to be a pop radio hit. It definitely did and was, but its roots,
it's not a revolution track. Sure.
No, it's not. Its roots are clearly black music, not pop music. It just happened to be an R&B or song that crossed over onto pop stations and pop radio, thanks to the success of Purple Rain and thanks to, Prince's megastardom at the time, where almost everything. Sorry, Apollonia 6's songs didn't quite get to megastardom status.
Yeah, such a shame.
But Jungle Love definitely did, and there's reasons for that. So Anyway, wanted to bring it up. Thought it was worthy of discussion a little bit for this song.
Yeah, definitely. It's really good concept.
Then into the next verse, again, like a lot of these verses are going to be very similar. Just going to be kind of talking about it's essentially, as I mentioned before, a bunch of come-ons. Morris Day's character is singing all these come-ons to this woman, trying to get her to sleep with him. You've got a pretty car. Think I want to drive it. I mean, you can take a look at that as another Little Red Corvette-esque analogy, metaphor. Yes. But I'll tell you, say I'll drive a little dangerous, take you to the crib, rip you off, Jungle Love. I think the rip you off line is interesting because I think a lot of people think of rip you off meaning steal.
I don't think that's what he means here, is it?
No, I don't think that's what he means either. I always thought of it more as like, does it mean like break you off? Like take you to the crib, rip you off, or like another slang term that maybe could be synonymous, break you off. Basically, fuck you good.
Not dissimilar to jack you off, right?
Right, not necessarily the exact same thing, but
but in the same ballpark, I think.
Yeah, definitely make her feel good. We'll just put it that way. But drive a little dangerous is definitely, another metaphor. All this is like sexual innuendo being used here. You've got a pretty car, drive it.
Like you said earlier, this bit kind of, I always see the similarities with the with Little Red Corvette. And the way you park your car sideways, drive a little dangerous. The car becomes the focal point, and the kind of not very subtle analogy for what is actually on his mind.
Right. Take you to the crib, rip you off. So definitely wants to take her home, take her to his place, ideally, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Just take you to the crib. Doesn't say my crib or your crib. Just take you to the crib, wherever. And I'll show you my jungle love. And that's basically what leads into the chorus again. Think I want to know ya, my jungle love, girl, I'd love to show ya. And then we get to the breakdown. Come on, baby, where's your guts? You want to make love or what? So I guess I'm getting out of this basically. Do you have what it takes? Are you brave enough to take me on? Do you want to do this or not? Do you have the guts to do this?
Yeah.
What you get
exactly to? That primal base instincts, and it's not even it's less of a question than a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit confrontational. Like, he's not being coy. He's basically challenging her.
That's it.
And at this point, you get the impression that if she says no, then he's just like, okay, moving on. I shot my shot, and you don't have what it takes in order to be with me, so I'm going to move on and try to find someone else because you don't have the guts to do it.
Yeah, he's going to be back on the prowl if this doesn't happen immediately after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If this doesn't pan out for him, he'll be back on the prowl. I want to take you to my cage, lock you up and hide the key. Bring only water, baby, because if you're hungry, take a bite of me. So there we go again with the cage, and another very animalistic. This is a good one for that, because what do we do with wild animals? We tend to lock them in cages because they're dangerous.
And occasionally give them water if they're good.
And yep, bring them water because every living creature needs water. And of course, then you've got to turn it into a come on as well. If you're hungry, take a bite of me. So just, kind of fun lines that fit the narrative, fit the theme. jungle theme.
Fun given that we've defined the context and we know this is all tongue in cheek. But again, at face value, this could be quite disturbing imagery, right?
Like turning somebody into a sexual slave. Yes, that would be exactly disturbing, disturbing imagery. If taken at, as you said, like surface, face value, don't understand the context, just reading the lyrics, not understanding how the character of Morris Day is portrayed and has been portrayed, all of that could be lost, and just like somebody reading it would be potentially shocked, maybe not horrified, but potentially horrified by how misogynistic these lyrics kind of come off.
Exactly, and this is like classic 80s Prince, and remember, it is Morris Day, but Morris Day is just a construct of Prince. Like the time is just a construct of Prince, and they're just facets of various personae that are playing out in Prince's mind. And so, and this is the thing. Like, I think if you get Prince, you find this hilarious and quite creative, and it's an insight into his impish sense of humor. But if you don't, you go down the Tipper Gore path and start talking about censorship because he's morally outrageous and a bad role model and so on. And so actually, I think this verse is kind of a microcosm of all that moral outcry and moral debate around what Prince meant vis-a-vis mainstream media and representation and the rest of it. So, it's on one level, it's this kind of primordial, animalistic, buffoonish pimp character that is Morris Day, but actually with a bit more analysis, it's quite telling because it's an insight into how Prince was playing around with his music, but also with his public persona and how he's playing around with the media and the public at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. I think you nailed it. This song is that, and the fact that there's so many different facets of Prince's writing ability, that he can write a song like this for the time, which, as you mentioned, is just a facet of himself, an extension of his own personality, an extension of his own creativity, and then turn around and write a song like Sex Shooter, which is just dripping with sexuality, but from a female perspective. And then also write something very heartfelt and emotional like Purple Rain or The Beautiful Ones, bombastic pop music with rock elements. It's just, this period of his career is just so impressive to me for so many reasons. And then, The Glamorous Life. I mean, we haven't even touched on Sheila E.'s debut album, which came out the same year, and he was writing all of this stuff at the same time. So you've read the book, the Dwayne Tudall Purple Rain Sessions book, and you're just flipping the page after page like, oh my God, today he wrote Jungle Love. The next day he wrote Glamorous Life. The next day he wrote Sex Shooter, and then, he had to fill the space in for a montage scene in Purple Rain. So he wrote When Doves Cry. It's like, holy shit, this dude.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean,
impressive.
reading that book is exhausting. Just thinking about how much intellectual and creative and physical effort must have been like coursing through his veins at this time. It's almost, it's kind of pretty superhuman, isn't it? But it is an artist at the peak of their powers. Like people talk about Mozart, and I recently read this book called Dickens and Prince, and it was drawing parallels between Charles Dickens and Prince. And actually, there's lots of similarities in their lives, but the main one is just these guys just never stopped. They just kept creating things, and not just not just filler. All of this stuff is good. Like you say, there's just huge range, and these lyrics are like really basic, but it's not because he has a basic vocabulary or he is only like has a single-minded obsession about writing really rock hard funk that's obsessed with sex, right? It's the same guy who wrote When Doves Cry and Purple Rain, and then would go on to write Sign of the Times. This is just an incredible range and versatility and creativity and showmanship. I think this is why, so many of us just think Prince is one of the greatest, if not the greatest musicians ever.
Amen. Amen. I think you nailed it again. This is just an example of what he can do to fill a need for a band that is basically an extension of himself. It needs to bring down the house. It needs to be funky and fun and sexy, and it needs to be catchy. The song is super catchy. I don't think there's any question. Like, you can sing along to this entire song. A lot of people just sing along to the chorus and do the oh, and they'll do some of the affectations, like, yes, more stays,
yeah,
yes. And you got the somebody bring me a mirror, and you can do all that stuff. And if you watch the movie enough, you can even do the dances if you've got them memorized. The Morris and Jerome dance that they do after the mirror part.
Yeah,
it's all just fun, and
it's so iconic.
It's harmless.
Well, yeah,
I think the song is harmless. So anybody who overthinks this song and thinks it's misogynistic or problematic is overthinking it and also not understanding the context.
Yeah, I completely agree. They are, like you say, they don't get the context. They don't understand Prince, and they probably have an agenda somewhere, I think, as well. So, yeah, like you say, it's a great song. It lends itself well. Like, it works well on record. It works great on video. It's amazing live. It's almost made for the whole call and response thing, isn't it? The chorus and the verse. There's something so simple, so catchy, and yet so tight about it. It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And then we don't get it in the originals version, but Jesse rips on guitar in the song too. And unfortunately, like in the Purple Rain version, the live version that's played in Purple Rain, it starts to fade out as it transitions from that scene to the next scene during Jesse's guitar. But you gotta, and of course the single edit doesn't include that either, because the album version's over 5 minutes long. So they truncated that for the single edit. The single edit also eliminates Jesse's guitar solo. So poor guy brought the melody, brought the song to Prince, and he gets shafted.
And it's a great solo as well. It actually it gives the song another little lease of life towards the end of things.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So there isn't much else with Jungle Love. I mean, it's just a lot of repeating of the same lines. Jungle Love, oh. So from that perspective, there isn't really much else to talk about, Farooq. So do you have any additional thoughts or comments you wanted to bring to the table?
Nothing hugely profound, to be honest. A bit like the song, but again, I think it's fun. It's one of those. For me, it's one of the iconic Prince moments of the 80s, even though it's the time. But it's part of that whole big Purple Rain movement that swept all before it. And yeah, it's simple and it's very crude. It's very direct, but actually, if you dig a little bit below the surface and you know a little bit about Prince, it's actually a really fascinating insight into his range and also his sense of humor. And it's one of the songs I just love. I've had it playing in my mind whilst we've been doing this whole recording, and probably we'll have it there for the rest of the evening in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that we have two versions, three versions to enjoy if you want to talk about the album version, the radio edit, and then Prince's version from originals. I would love to hear whatever. I mean, I don't know if it exists, but if it did exist, I would love to hear the instrumental version that Jesse brought to Prince.
Whatever
back
it was.
Then.
Was it just the guitar solo? Was it a guitar line? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know, but it must have been enough. It must have been enough for Prince to be intrigued, because he definitely decided this was something that he wanted to flesh out and pursue. So it must have been good.
Apparently, Prince was in a very bad mood during that studio session, according to the Two Doll book. He was giving his sound engineer a very hard time, and he was in complete perfectionist mode. But it's one of those things, for a Prince fan, it's like you'd have loved to be a fly on the wall when all this stuff was happening.
Yep, for sure. Can only wish. And thankfully we have the books and the people that were there that are still around that can tell the story. So
yeah. I mean, that's one of the great things, isn't it? That it's so well documented, and there's so many people doing brilliant work, like Tudor, like his book, just incredible. So much research, so thorough, so diligent, and just a great read as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I don't really have anything else to talk about in terms of Jungle Love either, so I guess this will be it for this episode. Thank you, Farooq, for joining me again.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, and it's always great to talk to you, Jason, so thanks.
You're welcome, and I think we'll have to do it again soon.
I look forward to it anytime, mate.
All right. And this has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can find the show at pressrewind.net. You can also find the show social media on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, aka Twitter, and YouTube. And until next time, thank you very much, and goodbye.